Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're continuing our week-long discussion about exercise, and we're going to be talking about modern flexibility training principles. Flexibility is one of the main reasons why people reach out to us or watch or listen to our content. And today we're going to talk to you about how we do it.
Let's rock. If you're new to the tribe, we've got Rich behind the mix. Rad is at the table with me, Yanni Baumeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode, as always, is brought to you by our Unify Movement System, the only online program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Now get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. As a valued listener, you can always use the link in the description to get your first month free. This week, I'm very excited to announce that we are having an epic 72-hour flash sale for our at-home workouts. This is an incredible opportunity to test pilot how we combine strength and flexibility and fitness training into one efficient 60-minute workout. I would dare say the most efficient 60-minute workout you are ever going to get. This weekend, starting Friday, if you're just tuning in live, you can grab an epic discount on that program. Get it, get it, get it.
So much epicness.
So much epicness. Warm welcome. If you're on the live stream in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group, leave a comment and we'll send you some love. Remember, anyone can join and interact. And before we get started, big shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit the like button and support the channel. Subscribe if you like what you see. Today we are joined by none other than Phil White from ADPT Physio, smartest and sexiest man in the room, second to none.
Second to Rich.
Second to Rich, maybe on the sex appeal, but it's a very close second. How are you, brother?
Good, mate. Good. Happy to talk about flexibility. It's one of those fun things that I think is so important for people to understand and kind of getting a good understanding of like when flexibility is a really positive thing to pursue and when maybe it's misguided to pursue, as I often go on about with people wanting to fix all of their ailments with flexibility. So I think having this good discussion of how I guess our understandings of flexibility have changed over time should really give the listeners some useful information.
Yeah,
so
look, I know Rad's going to really have a lot to share today, so I'm going to get my 2 cents in first. And this is really the message that I want you guys to take home. We'll start with the end in mind. Flexibility and strength training are in and of themselves the one thing in the UMS, and we want you to think like that. We don't want you to compartmentalize stretching and strength training. We want you to start bringing it together and think, okay, it's all inclusive. Every time we work for flexibility, we're also working for end range strength. And if you're not doing that, I think you're really, really not training with the most modern methods possible. This is what we would call the modern standard or the modern principle, which is that you're combining strength and flexibility constantly. And that is what produces the biggest results for our tribe, definitely. It's a really, really revolutionary sort of approach to flexibility training. And as we say, we have it all over the place here at Unity Gym. True strength cannot be achieved in the absence of mobility, but also true flexibility cannot be achieved in the absence of strength.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's evolved so much over the years for us. When I started, when I made a decision about 6 years ago that I was going to get flexible, I was really tired of just not being able to, do the things that I wanted to be able to do because of a lack of flexibility and mobility. And I started stretching really, really hard, and I got a lot of injuries from it, and I hit a glass ceiling pretty quickly. And then I started to learn about a lot of different methods that I'd never heard about before. Loaded stretching, end range strength, using eccentrics, isometrics, a whole bunch of different techniques. Really changed the way that I trained, created the Mobility Masterclass, which got a great result for thousands of people around the world. Learned even more, worked with some really, really flexible people and people that are really ahead of the game with this stuff. Joachim Hilderson, a friend of ours. I worked closely with him and from there went on to create the Flexibility Masterclass, which is really even the evolution of the Mobility Masterclass. And it just gets such amazing results. We've got so many examples of people in Unity Gym that are doing pancakes, chest to floor that could barely touch their toes when they started, or doing full splits or back bridges or whatever. And all over the world as well, there's people posting pictures and videos of themselves saying, oh my God, I can't believe how flexible I am after 3 months or whatever it was.
I think that's impressive, but you know what I think is more impressive? I think it's more impressive when you turn your phone off before we go live. No, I think that what is more impressive is that when you watch our tribe posting videos, this is something I noticed the other week with Alex, one of our online coaching tribe members, and he basically, you know, posted a video just like everyone does of their squat, and you look at the level of like perfect squat. Full range squat depth that our tribe are achieving, which, you know, when you look at it, when you go to a mainstream gym, it's few and far between when you see someone squatting really good. And, you know, we were proven this again when we went to a workshop or a course, I remember, and you and I were the only two out of a big bunch of personal trainers who, when they were assessed, could squat properly. You know, where they said, okay, you'd qualify for Olympic lifting. That was with Ian King, I remember. And they just did a simple overhead squat test, and none of the other personal trainers could squat properly, you know?
Same thing every time. We've done a course with Tony Battaji with more people in the room, and there's about 30 people. We're the only people that could squat, and every personal trainer, they're all jacked. But whenever they get up, they immediately, when they're about to squat, oh, yeah, my squat's not very good because I've done this or that. None of them could just do it.
Yeah, but when you look at the tribe around the world posting videos, and I know this is a big self-promotion, but it's not really. I want you guys to focus on the people I'm talking about here. They all demonstrate these amazing squats, you know, and there's always little areas that we can improve on, and, you know, hold the elbows up more, get tighter in the upper back or the thoracic, or shoulders down and back more. But they're, in comparison to the most people, these aren't fitness professionals, these aren't personal trainers, these are people, some of them are, but these are people who are just learning, and they squat like hands down better than most people in other gyms, you know. So I think that's really impressive, because there's movements like the squat is a great combination. It's a great demonstration of strength and flexibility married.
Yeah. And before we kind of go on with, like, I guess how we, you know, you guys have developed the current system, I think it's an important chat to have just briefly about like what flexibility is for, and kind of getting people's head right about why they're pursuing, you know, levels of flexibility, because this is just something that I see working with patients in the gym, and, you know, patients in my clinic who come in, and I always like to ask people basically what they think has caused the injury and what they think will make it better, because I like to get on the same page about what their sort of underlying beliefs are around their injury and what will heal their injury, and just make sure that I can then communicate in a level that I don't just ignore that they've got some wildly different belief to the direction that I'm trying to take them on. So I have this very specific question to just see where they're at, and then just try and get that right understanding. And so many times people are like, you know, I've got this injury, just hurts whenever I'm in this position, and I just think I probably need to get a bit more flexible and do a bit more stretching. And that is the case for some injuries. Like some injuries, it is a matter of, you know, you're lacking a bit of range of motion. But for a majority of injuries, particularly with joint-related stuff, flexibility in and of itself, getting to a deeper range, pushing kind of beyond the limits of what you currently have, is going to be one of the worst things you can do. But in the culture, flexibility has kind of got this like magical therapeutic like air around it that strength training doesn't have and fitness training doesn't have, where it's seen as like a cure-all thing that, you know, it's kind of got wrapped up in this like mystic yoga space that I think is very misguided. And I am a big fan of flexibility, but I just want people to get their head right that they're kind of pursuing flexibility and for the right reasons, because it's just, I see it so often where people just like sack off the rest of strength and fitness and just go so down the rabbit hole of flexibility in the pursuit of like health and performance, but don't realize it. That's just a misguided belief from the culture of movement. So
yeah, look,
that's
if E equals MC squared, I think flexibility without strength equals instability. You know, like there seriously though, like if you lack strength
Yeah.
in the range of movement, it produces instability, and instability, as we all know, causes problems in the joint and injury. And I think that that's something that people need to understand.
And not only that, like often, if you have a muscle tear, think about stretching something that's torn. That's going to be that's going to piss it off. Think about if you have something happening in the joint, like a cartilage injury, and then you think that stretching will make it better. You're basically just like pushing those bones as far as they possibly can and putting the cartilage under like more load than it can handle, thus making things worse. So I think it's just a really important thing to understand that from the get-go. Also, just with performance, stiffness is also quite beneficial in many cases for power and speed. So if you're wanting to run really fast, don't just stretch your Achilles constantly, because that, as a tight spring, is a very efficient way of running very fast. And if you're like, I just get sore calves when I go running, I better just stretch the shit out of it, you're going to make yourself slower, and you're going to make yourself more likely to develop a tendinopathy, because the reason your calves are getting tight is not because of a lack of stretching, but a lack of load capacity through targeted strengthening. So I just wanted to get that big old caveat out of the way, because I think I'm such a big fan of flexibility, and I think there's so many benefits to your life, but I just want to make sure that people are pursuing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because the reasons I pursue flexibility have changed a lot just in the last couple of years. Like originally it was because I did Kung Fu and I wanted to be able to kick high and I wanted to be able to do the more advanced martial arts movements, and that's a good reason to want to be flexible if you're a martial artist, of course. We're big on having motivation and reasons to train that are beyond, the way that you look, but something that really pushes you to get better. So they're good reasons, but I stopped martial arts and I started calisthenics and movement training, and I wanted to be flexible to be able to do the cool calisthenics and movement training stuff. So I worked on the flexibility, and then I started to create these benchmarks for myself, because I'd look at people that were way more flexible than me, and I would use that as a standard and think, well, I want to achieve that, and I would put a lot of effort in pursuing that. And I got very flexible along the way. But what I found is that I got to a point where my body's limitations started to come into place. And whether this is true or not, I think there is some weight in this for the average person. I've worked with coaches that when we talked about my lack of flexibility compared to some of the people in the room, because I'm a flexible person compared to the average person, but if I go to a gymnastics club, I'm not flexible at all. But and coaches have said to me, yeah, you don't have the same flexibility as them, but you've got more strength, you've got more stability, your joints are more robust. So it's an interesting thing, because I found that I got to a point where I was so obsessed with trying to get the full splits, and I never got that like gymnastics 180 degree split. I got probably 170 degree split, and I worked so hard to get that last 10 degrees, and I just couldn't get it. And I don't pursue that anymore now, and I maintain easily 95% of what my full range of motion ever was, with almost zero effort. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the ways that I maintain it and the ways we maintain it. But I put so much effort into trying to achieve something that was based on comparing myself to a standard that was unrealistic for me. And for what? For what reason? Whereas what we do now and what we do with the UMS and the way we have such efficient workouts is, it brings it back to what Yanni said at the start of the episode. It's the idea that, it shouldn't be that you pursue either strength or flexibility. It should be that you pursue this balanced body. And when you start looking at it that way and you start learning about more modern ways of doing flexibility, you don't have to be, doing these ridiculously long stretching sessions that take you away from so many other things. You can do what we do, where resting between your strength training, you do flexibility training on other areas of the body that aren't being used right now, doing loaded methods that still allow you to rest and recover from your strength training. And then also doing things like ass to grass squats, not lifting so much weight that you can't access full range of motion with the amount of weight that you have on the bar. Same with bench pressing, shoulder pressing, all of these strength movements that if you access the full range of motion, you'll be really surprised as to the level of flexibility that you unlock. And then when you also combine that, of course, with opposing muscle group training, so you're training synergy in the joint, and you're, like, for example, with a bench press, like if you use dumbbells in a neutral grip where you allow the dumbbell to pull you down so the shoulder goes into full extension, but then within the same workout, You also do rowing movements where you pull into full extension. So you're, on one hand, you're being pushed by the weight and creating strength out of it, and then on the other hand, you're training the opposing muscle group to pull yourself into it. Like those methods have proven to be far better for your joint, in our training, like for us and for our members, rather than trying to create flexibility in the shoulder joint by just going to town on stretching, that completely neglects strength and might make you really flexible in your shoulders, but it creates problems in other areas.
Yeah, look, I want to make it really clear that I from a personal perspective, I've done like 3 completely different periods of my life training with very different approaches to exercise. And first of all, I trained as an elite level athlete in boxing, and all of it was primarily skills-based training with a sprinkle of strength, speed development training only a couple of days a week, and then a lot of cardiovascular training, which consisted of different types of boxing drills, running drills, sprints, things like that. No flexibility whatsoever. We didn't stretch at all. We did a little bit of mobility drills to warm up in the shoulders, but that was about it. And then I did, and that was from the age of 14 to 30. And then in between that, I did a decade of quite serious bodybuilding and a sprinkle of Olympic lifting and powerlifting in there, which was towards the end of it. And then this last decade of my training has been heavily geared towards a more balanced approach to training, where I'm not training for anything specific, but I'm training strength, flexibility, and fitness all together. And I can tell you 100, and I'm now older, so I don't have as much youth on my side. I'm turning 41 this month and next week, and so the boxing was as a teenager and a 20-year-old, and the bodybuilding was largely from 25 to 35 years old. And I can tell you, like hands down, and I had a great call with a mate of mine who was along a lot of that journey with me, especially the bodybuilding and powerlifting the other day. And, he owns a really great, very successful fitness business and brand as well. And he, said, watching what you guys do and looking at you and your brother in comparison to everyone else that we got started, we are so much healthier, fitter, stronger, more flexible than any of these guys that we started with the exception of a couple. Like I definitely can't say I'm stronger than Sebastian Oreb or Cameron Oreb, mm-hmm. But I don't know, maybe I could say I'm healthier. I'm not sure, that'd be debatable. But I can tell you now
definitely
that being balanced, having a more balanced approach feels better. Like I feel better as a human being. I feel better. I'm much more okay. Like, we've been running together lately and I can run now and I can, I feel like more of an athlete. Like my body moves better. I feel better. I'm not aching. I don't hurt. I've got this little niggle in my back at the moment that I'm hassling Phil to massage, but it's minuscule in comparison. I can tell you the decade that I spent bodybuilding and not stretching and powerlifting, I was constantly hurting, constantly in pain, constantly managing the next muscle tear in my body or something like that, and boxing was very similar. I started weightlifting when I was boxing because I was continually injuring my lower back.
Yeah, and I just want to talk there just like a bit about why that might be the case and why sort of having that level of flexibility is going to be so beneficial. It's like
I don't want to. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to focus on the flexibility. I want to focus on the balance.
Well, that's it, because I wanted to basically talk about movement variability. Whereas, like with each of those kind of rabbit holes you've gone down and talking about those other guys and their specialization towards, one particular aspect of training, that ends up meaning that you're really well suited to that particular thing, but then anything outside of that, your structures, all the energy systems in your body, your muscle contraction, like your fiber types, your joint surfaces aren't conditioned to basically go outside of what you basically spent all your training doing. So by adding in this movement variability and adding in this energy system variability, it means that like throughout the rest of your life, when you're doing little things here and there, picking your kids up off the ground, I don't know, running after a train, you're not going to suddenly, like running after a bus, sorry, you're not going to suddenly like pull a muscle or end up with like a blown up knee because you just haven't done anything like that for so long. When you've got this balance of flexibility, strength, and fitness, throughout that training, you've just had so much variability in there that your body's prepared for basically anything, and you're not overloading one particular system. So all the systems kind of are in a happy place. So
see, the thing is, and I agree 100% with what you're saying, obviously, but the one thing that I don't think is spoken about a lot is the reality of specialization. You know, because it looks really cool from the outside, being able to bench press 240 kilos and squat 340 kilos and deadlift 360 kilos. But the reality is, and I've spoken to a lot of these guys personally, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. You know, to be that strong, you got to be very heavy. And to be that heavy, a lot of them say they need a breathing apparatus to sleep at night, you know, because I know that like Hafthor and them had chronic sleep apnea and things like that. It is not a healthy state to put the body through. And anyone who argues that is full of shit. They haven't spoken to a world's strongest man. And like Eddie Hall talked about this, to get to the weight that he broke the deadlift record before Hafthor broke it. He said, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I feel like shit, you know. And I've spoken to even Bass, and he talks a lot about he's constantly dealing with a lot of pain in his body and things like that. It's not a healthy state to be in, you know. Like if health means absence of injury or illness, most of the time elite level specialization athletes are always sporting some sort of an injury, you know.
Yeah. And the same goes for going down the rabbit hole, or specializing entirely in fitness and specializing entirely as
you know, runners. I mean, we've got an example of a cousin who is a contortionist who had serious back problems, injuries, you know, from being hyper flexible and that being the focus. And now she's trying to rebuild strength in her body because she'd just gone way down the rabbit hole of flexibility training, you know. So what I'm trying to push across here, and the message I want everyone to understand, is that the balanced approach is, in my opinion, in my personal experience, a much nicer place to sit, you know, full time. Like you might dabble in things a little bit and go off in one direction a little bit for a training phase, but as a general period of, you know, restoring balance, it's a very nice place to sit most of your time, you know.
I think it's the only place to be as you get older. If you want to be smart about it, you know, more of the same gets you more of the same, right? And if you want something different, you've got to do something different. And so often people come to us, especially to Phil, where, you know, the issue is that they've got aches and pains in their body that they haven't had before and they want to deal with it. And, you know, often when you challenge people with this kind of thing, their answer is, like for a lot of high achievers and a lot of specialists, their answer is, well, but that's going to take me away from the thing that I love doing more of. And yeah, it's a funny thing to deal with for me, because you think, well, you know, you're telling me that you've got pain in your shoulders, you know, because you've been doing CrossFit for 5 years, but you're not willing to give up CrossFit and try something different, you know, and you're in your 30s, wait till you're in your 40s. See how you're feeling then.
And as we talked about yesterday on kind of talking about optimizing performance, it's often just, if you're really lacking one element, just bringing in a bit of that element will just take you so much further than doubling down on the element that you're already really good at.
And often, I mean, talking about optimizing performance, like what we spoke about yesterday, often, you know, if you're training 2 hours a day or whatever in something, if you dedicated 15 minutes or 20 minutes of that time to this thing that you're not doing anything of, often your performance will increase in that thing that you're trying to get better at, you know?
We have a comment here that I think we don't have much time to give it love. Quick shout out to Vinny Brown. Great work, Vinny, on your training so far. But I'm going to dive straight into William Wong here, who's saying that he has, first of all, loves us, thinks we're amazing. He's been doing the 18-minute flexibility routine and also started doing foundations, and has just been recently diagnosed with a frozen shoulder by MRI last week. The doctor suggests that it's unrelated to the exercise, but he's losing tons of range and strength in his shoulder. He's regressed to a beginner level at foundation program now for most upper body exercise. He's asking, should I stretch my shoulder in a different way, do a shoulder rehab program instead of the foundation program? So we can give him some insight very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But, you know, my understanding, and we've got Phil here who can probably give a much better understanding, is that, you know, the frozen shoulder is going to need, it's a funny thing, and it can be even just genetic.
Yeah, it's a something that Rad has also had a whole lot of experience with.
Yeah, I've
training
rehabbed 2 frozen shoulders.
Yeah, but the thing is there that like it's almost entirely a self-limiting disease. Like it's definitely a good idea to do as much as you can, like keep training while you've got it, but the training itself is unlikely to change like the course of the condition. Like it's usually just going to take time, and you can definitely help maintain a whole bunch of strength, or like maintain strength and put yourself in a position to gain back the range quickly when it finishes. But it's one of those like horrible things where it seems to be a combination of a metabolic thing, a hereditary thing, hormonal kind of factors, and it just kind of has to run its course. That's the latest research on it. You can't really suddenly undo it by just finding the right exercise, but what you can do is really set yourself up for success afterwards by maintaining some level of training.
Yeah, and that's the advice I would say. Just keep training, keep loading it as much as you can. Stretching is not going to fix it. It's like people feel like, I've just got to stretch, but sometimes that just puts way too much load on the area,
really uncomfortable,
and it becomes worse.
The way that I helped a couple of members overcome frozen shoulder, and I'll say that again, the way that I helped was that we created programs for them that, you'll have a range of motion that you can move the shoulder in, and then you strength train within that range of motion in all the classical ways. You do pushing and pulling, you do bicep curls and tricep extensions, you do external and internal rotation exercises, and you basically just go to the end of your comfortable range, but you make sure that you're accessing that comfortable range.
And in the very frozen stage, that range might be no range. Like it gets to the point where it can totally lock down, but still have an isometric force on that. So particularly with external rotation can become really horrible. So even just resisting an internal rotation force is going to be enough to just maintain some of that strength. Really double down on the strength on the other side of your body, because you do get bilateral training effects from neural drive, and make it a really good opportunity to work on your lower body, both flexibility and strength. You've just got to keep that training habit going, which is what this week has been all about, is how to build a good training habit. Don't let it
sounds you're on the right track. You've got great resources here, brother. And in regards to the shoulder rehab program, absolutely thinking of all the movements that we use in the shoulder rehab program, it's not going to hurt to add that into your training, especially a little bit, especially, but it's more gentle than big push pull movement patterns. And as the frozen shoulder progresses, you may find that like those little ball drills and stuff might be all you can handle, and that would be a really nice way to load it.
Do what you can handle.
Stephen Pellegrino's right, motion is lotion. All right, that's it, guys. Jump over to the UMS online coaching group. We'll be over there in just a minute. Other than that, tomorrow we're going to wrap this series up, and we're going to talk a bit more about the depth of our strength training protocols. And we're going to talk about how the best way to, test this. If you haven't tried any of our training programs before, 100% the best way to test it, because there's very little barrier of entry, is with our at-home workouts, which are going on sale tomorrow. The barrier of entry is 0 because you don't need any equipment, and it's going to teach you the exact same principles and philosophies we use with the combination of strength, flexibility, and fitness in our UMS online coaching. It's a fantastic way to try and get an idea of what we do. See you tomorrow. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.